Excerpt from A Chance for Life. Chapter 1, May. Would you like to remind me one more time of why I'm doing this? Sam could hear the anxiety in her own voice as she hurried to follow the center's director to the back offices. You volunteered. No, Sam said. I volunteered to write and edit your PR and in-house publications. I volunteered to write articles for newspapers. I did not at any time volunteer to pretend to counsel a pregnant woman. Yes, but Mary went home sick today, and I have 2 girls coming in at 4:30, so I need you to pinch hit. But Elaine disappeared into her office, effectively cutting off Sam's protest. Sam stopped short and took several deep breaths, trying gamely to slow her racing heart. What in the world am I supposed to say? She asked the empty hallway in a soft, plaintive voice. I've never even had sex before, let alone been pregnant. A movement in the doorway brought Sam's gaze up sharply, and she blushed to see Elaine standing there. The compassion and genuine affection mirrored on her face made it clear she had heard every word. As Elaine stepped toward her, Sam knew she had to be the most beautiful woman she had ever met. Elaine had the classic good looks of a young Lena Horne. Her smooth caramel complexion and clear, sparkling, dark chocolate eyes, making her look far too young to be the mother of 4, let alone the mother of 4 strapping boys, the eldest of whom had just finished his first year of college. Her figure defined what it meant to be petite, and only her habitual 3-inch heels allowed them to stand eye to eye as she laid her hands on Sam's shoulders and gave them a gentle squeeze. You are why we're here, Sammy, Elaine reminded her softly, as she reached back to play with Sam's silky, dark, blonde tail in a familiar gesture. Dark eyes met deep blue, and Sam was reminded that Elaine was just as beautiful on the inside. You may have nothing at all in common with these young women, as you say, but you have everything in common with their unborn babies. Sam supposed that was true enough. Had her own birth mother had access to an abortion clinic, in all likelihood, Sam would have ended up in a sterile metal pan rather than on the steps of St. Margaret's Catholic Church. But still. Elaine smiled, understanding, and taking Sam's face between her warm palms, kissed her lightly on both cheeks. Just speak from the heart, she said, and when in doubt, let God do the talking. Sam took a deep breath and reluctantly accepted the inevitable. She had known Elaine ever since the older woman had agreed to an interview for an article Sam was writing for a college course. And while that interview had garnered her the highest grade in the class, she had walked away from it certain Elaine Mercer had learned far more about Sam Murin than Sam had about the founder and director of the Open Arms Crisis Pregnancy Center. Elaine had been most impressed with the article, though, and had asked Sam to do more writing for them, giving Sam a community service niche and, far more importantly, a much-needed friendship that had flourished. It had been Elaine who introduced Sam to Aggie Montgomery, her landlady and friend for the last 9 years, when she learned Sam was looking for affordable off-campus housing the summer before her junior year. It had also been Elaine who invited Sam into her home and family, giving her a gentle giant of a surrogate father in the form of her husband Greg, and 4 terrific kid brothers who didn't seem to notice that she was blonde, fair, and blue-eyed when they pestered her playfully just like brothers everywhere were supposed to do. Following Elaine back into her office, Sam sank into one of the visitors' chairs. Of the 2 girls coming in today, I think I had better meet with Sarah Chase, Elaine said. She's only 17, and I've met with her before. She really wants to keep her baby now that she's seen the sonogram, and she called this morning to say she's talked the baby's father into coming in with her this afternoon. He ought to be horsewhipped, Sam muttered. Perhaps, Elaine said with a sad smile, though he too is only 17, and according to Sarah, one look at the sonogram was enough to completely reverse his stand that she should have an abortion. Thank God for the health clinic, Sam murmured. Amen. Elaine did not mention that it had been Sam's research and passionate presentation to the clinic's board that had convinced them to provide the much-needed, low-cost ultrasound services for women referred from the center. They would probably never know exactly how many lives would be saved because of Sam's work. Now, I've also spoken with Father Martinelli about Sarah and Pete, Elaine continued, and he's already found possible work for Pete, at least for the summer, and a place for Sarah to stay until the baby is born. She comes from an abusive home, and I suspect he does too, so they'll need all the support we can give them. They'll need tutors as well, since they're both high school dropouts, and they'll need to earn their GEDs, at least, if they're going to make it very far. The evening classes at St. Bridget's are going strong, Sam reminded her. As Father Martinelli's secretary for the last 7 years, Sam had been instrumental in getting St. Bridget's to start this educational ministry in conjunction with the college and work with a number of individuals who use the GED class and the adult literacy programs offered at the church in the evenings. Elaine smiled. I'm hoping to talk them both into going. What about the other girl? Sam asked, not really wanting to know, but deciding she'd better learn all she could before meeting with her. Elaine took a deep breath and opened another file folder. She's actually a much better match for you, I think, but she is going to be a real challenge. Sam looked up, certain she wasn't going to like what Elaine was going to tell her. Casey Daly is her name. She's your age, and according to her file, she's only coming in because her probation officer insisted. Probation officer? Elaine nodded. Apparently she has a bad habit of walking out of stores with items she hasn't purchased and has been caught with small amounts of marijuana, among other things. Oh, great. And you really think I can make a difference with her? Sam asked, incredulous. Lacking any kind of positive family role models growing up, Sam had managed to latch on to a few good teachers along the way who had encouraged her to remain above and apart the many self-destructive behaviors she had witnessed around her. And Sam couldn't imagine how she could possibly relate to this girl enough to help with her. I do, Elaine said, leaning across her desk. After speaking with her probation officer, it's clear she's both exceptionally selfish and morally challenged. She's already had one abortion and apparently can't wait to have another. That's where you come in. Me? Sam squeaked. Oh, come on, Sam, Elaine replied. You're the one who wrote a brochure on the health dangers inherent in multiple abortions. However unlikely this young woman is to be swayed by any concern for her baby, she could very well be persuaded to carry the baby to term and give it up for adoption if she understands what a second abortion could mean to her own health. Sam sat back with a sigh and considered that possibility. As she had learned from her research, there were a myriad of life-threatening risk factors to women who had just one abortion that became even more prevalent with multiple abortions. The most shocking thing to her had been the media's, government's, and especially the health industry's silence on the dangers involved in a procedure that not only killed tens of thousands of babies every year, but also threatened the lives of the women who aborted them, which only showed just how powerful the abortion industry had become in America. Still, would this woman, at 28 years old, believe anything Sam told her? Unlikely, but with Mary home sick, Sam knew she had to at least try. The great irony of this whole situation was the fact that Sam really didn't even particularly like kids. Having spent the first 17 years of her life being shuffled from one foster family to the next, she had had her fill of all age groups, from infants to toddlers to teens, and had long ago promised herself she would never have any of her own. The only kids she had ever met and liked were Elaine's boys, but even at the young ages they had been when she'd first met them, they had been exceptionally well-adjusted and well-behaved. And how likely was it that she would meet a guy like Greg, who was the best of fathers, in a place like Coventry? Added to that, she knew she herself fell far short as potential mother material, since before meeting Elaine, she hadn't even known what a good mother was, and had always assumed she would remain both single and childless. Still, she had always felt she owed it to God to do something for the unborn, since she herself had been spared as a baby. Her birth mother could just as easily have aborted her, or even thrown her into a dumpster, but something or someone had persuaded her to instead leave Sam on the front steps of the church, where she had been found and given a chance at life. Sam sighed and reached for the folder Elaine held. She scanned through the contents and shook her head in wonder. Here was a young woman who had come from a wealthy family, gone to the best schools, had all the material advantages Sam had never known, and yet her life was a mess. Her file was riddled with misdemeanors, warnings, drug and alcohol rehab, and even some jail time. It was pretty clear that her family had spent a great deal of effort and money in an attempt to keep her out of trouble. And suddenly Sam was relieved she herself hadn't had so many benefits, that she had been unable to learn to stand on her own 2 feet from an early age. "Should I use Mary's office?" she asked quietly. "Go ahead," Elaine said, and Sam detected both approval and relief in her friend's voice. Sam glanced up and managed a wry smile. "I'm not very hopeful here, Elaine." Elaine rose and came around the desk to pull Sam to her feet and give her a hug. "Just do your best, Sammy. That's all any of us can do." Sam nodded and headed across the hall to Mary's colorful office. Taking the chair behind the desk, Sam laid her head back and closed her eyes. "Dear God, what am I doing here?" she prayed, and sat for a long time listening to the quiet of the center. She didn't really expect an overt response. Praying had become as much a habit as anything else during her years at St. Bridget's, but she had never had a direct answer to prayers offered, no booming voices from heaven or immediate miraculous events, and didn't really expect one now. Still, eventually a small voice in the back of her head suggested she read the file she held a little more carefully, and she decided it was probably a good idea. Straightening, Sam opened the file flat and began to read. The more she read, the more inadequate she felt for the coming encounter, but she continued reading anyway, knowing it was all she had.